Engineers are humbled by nature, have to be, because reality will always surprise you. It's not, in other words, if you are an ego-driven engineer, reality will humble you. We really never forecast stuff like where we can be in 10 years, 15 years. What we can do is make intelligent bets on direction of technology. Like I mentioned, low-code platform, AI, static type systems.
How is the rural empowerment initiative of Zoho going? What have been your learning? Do you believe in luck? Thank you, Sridhar, for joining.
Thank you. Namaste. Vanakkam.
The first question, Sridhar, is what do you think will be the next major leap in the technology spectrum?
I don't know that anybody can forecast that. Today, if you ask the betting people, will say AI. Myself think AI-driven software, low-code platforms getting much smarter. So you describe your problem, it spits out a really good solution, which is mostly usable with minimal amount of testing. That's probably the lowest hanging fruit. So it comes right down to the kind of platforms we're building, the no-code platforms. I think that's where a lot of the low-hanging fruit is. And then AI applied to automation of various kinds. The knowledge as lawyers, to doctors writing reports, to all of that. Definitely we could benefit from it, but a lot more correctness has to be ensured. This is true in programming, but the reason why programming I see as the low-hanging fruit is there are tools, compilers that can ensure correctness. Even if AI gives us wrong code, the compiler can flag it. We don't have such tools for like lawyers' work. So that's why I think programmer is where the first impact I see.
Got it, Sridhar. As a continuation of that, Sridhar, so do you see AI giving production-ready code for programmers?
It won't by itself. We have to train it to give production-ready code, or we have to shape the code that's coming out to be production-ready. That's how I'll put it. In other words, there will be other tools involved. Collectively, the whole set of tools can give production-ready code. That includes, of course, grammar constraints on what kind of code you want to generate, compilers and verification engines, all of that go into this. So it's not just the AI alone, but all of the tools around it can ensure that it's production ready.
Got it, Sridhar. Thank you so much for that. As a programmer, Sridhar, so how should I embrace this? Should I be afraid of this development?
It is okay to be concerned. I think all of us in this industry have to be concerned. No one's future is guaranteed. Right? No company, no one is immune from all these forces. We should be concerned, but we should not panic. Because the way, if we are adaptable in our mind, whatever comes our way, we'll embrace. After all, if you go back 25 years ago, most of the technologies we use today didn't exist 27 years ago. A lot of it is new. And even some of the older technologies have been changed so much that they are just scarcely recognizable now. And new languages have come, new paradigms of programming have come. So we just have to keep adapting. And as a company, we have adapted. That's why we have survived. And I expect the same for the next 10, 20 years. It may even mean, as an example, you don't think of yourself as a programmer, but think of yourself as a kind of a solution provider to solve a particular customer problem, whatever the problem may be, like helping run a hospital, helping run a manufacturing facility. That may be where software engineers go into, rather than just straight out as software development. You don't think of it that way. You think of it as solving a customer problem.
Perfect, Sridhar. Thank you so much for that. So, a couple of questions specific to Zoho. I was recently in the Australia Zoho Leaks, and one user asked this question. I trust Zoho with my data because of our focus on privacy. Now, when I use third-party ChatGPT like tools, how can Zoho ensure my data is safe? Or is it with a third party at the end of the day?
We have now agreements in place where we only use it where in a privacy guaranteed way. And all of the vendors, AI vendors, are now making some guarantees about like your data is never used for training, and now they are putting in place boundaries so that a given enterprise data is only used for training their own models. So models are getting segregated. I think that's the direction it's going to go. We are aggressively investing in our own models. We are augmenting it with these models that third-party models. So I think our goal is to ensure privacy, first and foremost. We are willing to forego slowing down the pace of something so that we can ensure the privacy of data. So that's the way I put it.
Thank you, Sridhar. Zoho, we always say software is our craft. With tools like AI, will that become a commodity? Do you foresee that?
Any craftsman has to worry about this. Will my expertise become a commodity? And but there is always value for example, now you can now make music with a lot of programs, but still, there are people making music, and they are not out of business. Same thing with art. AI can generate art, but still human art is there. Computers can play chess better than humans, but we still celebrate human players. So all of this, I think, means that ultimately, because it is people who appreciate other people, computers are not appreciating us. So I think that is why that will always be there for craft. But again, for a software developer, we have to think broader as a solution provider to problems. Then we will use the tools ourselves to make the solution smarter, quicker, all of that.
Thank you, Sridhar. Sridhar, one related topic in this segment is low-code solutions as well, which also helps increase developer productivity. What was your vision behind Zoho Creator, and where are we now?
So Zoho Creator was born way back in the early days of Zoho, 2005. In fact, we were one of the earliest no-code platform out there. In fact, the terms did not exist yet. The term low-code and no-code did not exist yet in 2005. We introduced Zoho Creator then. We are now in the 6th major revision of it. We still keep going, and of course, the tool has become vastly more sophisticated. It has evolved to be a platform, all of that. But still, the original vision stands, which is that empower what we used to call the citizen developer these days. That is, people who are tasked with solving a software problem, but they don't want to become full-fledged programmers. They don't have the time or the inclination for it, but they still have to solve the problem. It is that person we targeted. That vision still stands. It has expanded quite a bit. Actually, I believe today, the range and depth and breadth of applications we can develop with something like Creator is just simply inconceivable even 15 years ago. And we are seeing that. Some very sophisticated production software is now being made with Creator. Even when I see it, I can scarcely believe actually this was made with Creator. That level of sophistication is coming to this platform now.
Perfect. So before we move on to the next topic, was there any aha moment that you had with such an experience, like when someone showed a product built on Creator?
Yes, and take our bookings or take any of the ERPs that we have for customers. Very often we look at the finished product, the app that comes out of it, particularly with the new canvas, all of this. You cannot believe that this is actually made with a low-code tool. It looks as though somebody really hand-coded everything in that app. That's really the power of these platforms. And I believe we are just only getting started. It's going to get even better in the future.
Thank you, Sridhar. We have a few questions specifically on certain technologies, whether Zoho uses them. What is your thoughts on those? So I'll start with those, Sridhar. First is tools like CRM and Creator of Zoho are now in analyst reports like Gartner, Forrester, etc., which means they are at the enterprise market. As a developer, what's the difference between a product that is tapping a enterprise market versus, let's say, a mid-market sort of a segment?
Really, it becomes a platform. See, any enterprise product, anything has to become a platform by itself. Now, actually, CRM itself is a low-code platform. And in fact, Creator and CRM are merging at that level. Some technologies are being shared there where to enable. So you can think of CRM as a very context-specific low-code platform. It is for customer experience apps you're building. Well, Creator is a more general-purpose low-code platform, but the technologies are becoming similar. Technologies are getting shared. Canvas, I mentioned. In a similar way, the Catalyst that was built in CRM is making its appearance in Creator Suite. So that is how we share the code. I expect this convergence to continue. So as products evolve to become platforms, and all of our products are evolving into platforms, the Creator Suite will play a vital role in that evolution.
Do you use ChatGPT or LLMs for your personal work?
My frequency of usage has reduced, and that's what actually there was recently a Wall Street Journal survey that reported the same thing. I noticed it about a month and a half ago myself. In fact, we ran a survey in our company. About 8,000 people took the survey, and it also indicated a kind of declining engagement over time. There was people who started using it heavily, their usage frequency reduced. That's something just a couple of weeks ago, Wall Street Journal captured the same thing. And I believe the reason is initially, of course, it's very exciting to see all of that. then later you struggle to find what would I use it for other than search. Well, I already have Wikipedia that I consult for new topics. Is it, if it's only rephrasing it, and rephrasing it sometimes introducing inaccuracies, like untruthful statements, then you have a problem. And a classic example, when one of my friends showed me, and he searched for my name in ChatGPT, and it confidently said he has a PhD from Stanford University. I don't have a PhD from Stanford University. I have a PhD from Princeton University. And you understand, when you understand LLMs, you understand why we make that kind of mistake. It's not even a mistake. It's looking at the next token. He obtained a PhD from, then it's predicting the next token. And in the token, maybe it will come, Princeton will come up with 80% probability. But then Stanford or something will come up with 10%, 5% like that. Then they have this temperature parameter. They will pick Princeton most of the time, the highest probability, but some of the time they will vary it around. That's the creativity. The temperature is what is called creativity, and they will pick Stanford. Maybe you do this 100 times, sometimes it might pick some other university. It might say Berkeley or something like that. So that is what is the problem with these tools. That you cannot trust on a given occasion whether it produced a truthful result or not. I think that's why Wikipedia or something is a more reliable source than relying on ChatGPT, if it's going to summarize information. And then there are, so basically I have, for example, tried to look up things I don't know, and I get scared whether it gave me accurate info or do I have to consult some other source to ensure the accuracy of that information, because it can make up stuff. So that's part of the reason. And then the novelty wears off. The fact that it's very human-like, well, that's okay, but we can get bored with humans too, right? So, yeah.
Sridhar, on a lighter note, long back you made this comment that only 3 people have ever read my PhD thesis. Do you think that number has increased now?
No, I think that will be, I don't think anybody will ever read it. And it's not even worth reading, I'm going to say.
Okay, we'll move on. See, this question is about how Zoho uses certain processes and frameworks. How do you handle Decode at Zoho? What is your thought around this?
I don't know that we handle it. The different teams will vary in this. And it's a case where there is a degree of conservatism that keeps code around. And in spite of the fact that you have version control systems, all that, code sometimes just gets stuck in a thing, because it's not anybody's priority at any given moment to eliminate this. So we have to go through this periodic cleanup operation. Some products do it. I don't think everybody does it. But recently we have made it a priority as part of, in fact, our security team catches a lot of these, and that's how we do it now.
So do you foresee Decode resulting in privacy and security issues as well?
Definitely, that is why you want to eliminate those. If code is not used, it shouldn't be there in the build. You can enhance your build tools to catch it and give you a warning that it won't even build if it's dead code. And we are investing a lot in tooling like that. So that's where our thing is going, where we are investing a lot of software development tooling. A lot of it is coming up in products like Creator, but a lot of them are used internally as well.
Got it. Thanks, Sridhar. Next question is about Rust. A user says that Rust is very powerful, but can it be made simpler without compromising the power?
I am not a huge fan of Rust, to be honest. Rust is a very interesting language that is, in my opinion, way too complex. And the index of that is, in fact, Shailesh, our VP of Engineering, reports the same thing. He extensively codes in Rust, but he says if he is off of that a month or two later, he comes back and looks at it. He has to spend a lot of time redoing this. My own preferred language approach would be, it has to be context-free grokkable. What I mean by that is, if I know the domain, if I know the algorithm, the code should be reasonably obvious. Without knowing the specific of how another programmer wrote it, if I know the domain, what we are dealing with, or if I know the algorithm, like I'm doing quicksort or I'm doing parsing, the code should be reasonably obvious. I don't think Rust gives you that. And that's why it won't be my preferred language.
Thank you, Sridhar. Next is, which side are you in? Swift UI versus Flutter?
I actually would like to say Flutter, but there's only one reason that I wouldn't say it, because Flutter requires a GC, and I am a huge non-fan of GC. In fact, I believe GC is one of the single worst inventions. It bloated memory, and any iPhone versus Android phones will have much more memory RAM than iPhone, and yet will to give equivalent performance. In other words, that extra memory is simply a cost, and it's taxing your battery. It's of course cost and weight, all of that. And the reason why that extra RAM has to be there is Android uses GC languages. iPhone does not. Swift is not garbage collected. Other than that, the reason why I would still prefer Flutter, if not for GC, Flutter would have been perfect. Then why would what is better about this? Well, it's a much better composable abstraction of UI. Swift UI, Flutter is much more composable UIs. Swift UI has tried to give you composability, but it falls short in some areas. But it has a huge benefit that, at least in the context of iOS, it is not a GC language, garbage collected language, so therefore it uses less memory, therefore it will be preferable. I would prefer my languages to be efficient also in runtime. I don't want to pay a tax at runtime, basically. Which is why I have good reason to prefer Rust over Go, but Rust I find it too complicated.
On a related note, Sridhar, would you say caching is not a good practice then?
Not caching is a good practice, but the problem is, it's generally well known in computer science that we have a garbage collected language. You write the same program in a GC language versus a non-GC language, you will have to use about 3 times the memory, maybe 5 times the memory. Here is the analogy I give. Like we all know, there is one strategy to make the room look clean. A lot of bachelors know this trick, where you have a large enough space, you put a little bit of junk all over the place, it doesn't look like it's cluttered. You try to concentrate in one room, it looks very cluttered. So the GC, what they do is they allocate a lot of empty space and they throw a little bit of junk here and there. It doesn't look cluttered. But you have to, in other words, if you have a very small room, you have to very carefully manage your objects. You can't throw shoes here, throw clothes there, all of that. It will become messy. But if you have a large house, you throw one piece of t-shirt there, one pair of shoes here. It doesn't look very cluttered. You would have made the same amount of mess, but it doesn't look very cluttered. You know this, right? But this is the principle of GC languages. They create a large enough arena where it doesn't look cluttered. And you are paying for the tax, basically. So 3 to 5 times the memory you are wasting. That's why, in fact, Chris Lattner, the creator of Swift languages, he said that why Swift will not and does not support garbage collection is, he said as a hardware company, Apple knows the price of memory. Memory is not free. Only when you spend, hardware company knows that memory is not free. Purely software engineers think memory is free. Well, it's free because somebody else paid for it. And that's why I think it's always a good practice. My own preferred languages will be memory efficient, CPU efficient, all of that. You should not waste resources. That is my single biggest criticism of Flutter, the Dart language itself. And same thing with Golang, same thing also with Java, same thing with JavaScript, all of that. In that respect, Swift and Rust are really good, but Rust is too complex for me. So that means that the ideal language that is not garbage collected, but that is also easy, relatively simple. There are languages like Zig that have come up. There's a language called V nowadays. And then there is a game programming language that's coming up called J language. All of these are now pioneering this area of statically typed non-GC languages. And I would put my money on that type of approach.
Next question, Sridhar, is given a choice, hypothetically, what past engineering technology decision of Zoho would you change now?
It's hard to say. Well, we are pretty much a Java on the server. Today, if I were to make the choice, definitely I will not use a garbage collected language. Though Java has been quite efficient, I would not want to be in Java in 5 to 10 years. Not because Java itself is bad. I just don't like garbage collected languages. That's all. We have to move to something better, and better languages are coming. Rust itself is a good attempt at that, but Rust is, as I said, too complex. Swift should have been more on the server side. It does not really play a role on the server side. So we are waiting for that language to emerge, and I think it's coming. It's coming. So.
Who's the ideal user of Zoho, and how would you define a user experience for this user? Because there are multiple varied profiles of users.
There is, for us, the real user is the person who is in a business, in a function they have to perform effectively, efficiently, not necessarily a programmer. So that's the way that we define our user, and they have to get serious work done. They want a degree of customization. They want to use our tools to get the most done for their business, and that's the ideal user. And for us, we have to make our own objective is to make the tools, make the products, all of it sort of context-free rockable. It has to have a light feel. That means I come in anywhere, I should be able to grasp from the nearby surrounding UX, all of that, what's going on. In other words, it shouldn't require a heavy amount of training to use it.
See, you're always a proponent of India, made in India for the last multiple years. Is Surya OS also a decision in that direction?
It's multiple dimensions. Ultimately, you realize if you want to be a really great, truly great software company, you have to create your language, you have to create an OS, you have to create databases, all of these fundamental technologies. And that's often forgotten today. We think that we can float in a high-level abstraction. I don't believe it. I believe you have to get down to the metal. In fact, someday you have to even design your own chips. That's where it's heading. So, and that's part of that we are doing this. Does it have a business case? Well, I don't think only in terms of business case. I think that is this kind of MBA thinking is what I really militate against. You have to actually also think in terms of, engineers have to have some fun. It's Engineers Day after all. And you have to invent, you have to hack something together, put something together, all of that. And that is why we are doing it right now. In other words, we don't know what the business case will be, but that will emerge as we do it. So, got it. Creator itself was born like that. Actually, I want to remind people, back in 2003, I was involved in an effort to build a framework. And then this whole, the new wave of building this emerged, and we then repurposed that effort, that 4 or 5 programmers were working on it, into something called Creator at that time. And it was repurposed technology. In fact, I have continued working on the same line and on a parallel track. So, and one branch was Creator in that. So, and I have continued working on it for the last 15, 20 years, seemingly without a real business purpose. But I have learned a lot from that effort. So, that's the goal.
Got it. So, that is in line with your vision that definitely citizen developers also can take up coding, solve their challenges?
In fact, more generally, this is broader. It's not just citizen developer. Anybody, in fact, I would encourage a lot more people to try to hack things together. Real world too. This whole idea of a maker lab and hacker space, all of that. Try to assemble stuff together and try to fix things. This culture has to be promoted widely. In other words, we cannot have this sealed stuff where nobody can repair all of that. And I notice, ever since moving to a village, in fact, in our farm context, a lot of our people have experience, for example, fixing a tractor when it's broken or fixing a pump set. These kinds of skills are essential. And I would like to encourage this, of course, among programmers and among regular people. And that's something, part of my own schooling goal is to make sure our students are really comfortable with technology around them. All of the technologies. Like you really are comfortable knowing what's inside, how to hack this, how to fix this, all of that.
Got it. So next question is, do you have a framework for learning new technologies? Would you recommend anything as a framework?
I don't know that. Again, that's an overly complex word. Simply you start maybe reading, watching some videos, start with a Wikipedia article, start with a blog post, somebody would have explained, and play with it, and then hack something together. In the coding context, go to download something, hack something together. That's how we always learn. And same thing with our students. Recently, 2 or 3 of our students in our school created this air cooler, and they ordered about 1,000 rupees worth of parts. It's so cheap, and they assembled an air cooler out of it. They used the coconut coir. So they used all of that material for filtering the air, all that, and putting the water. The water goes through this thing. So it's nice attempt. For high school students, right? That is the culture I want to create.
You just reminded me of something. Long back, you tweeted saying you want to purchase that automatic coconut tree climber. Did you do that?
No, actually, I haven't purchased it yet. I am planning to. It's in part because I actually had so many other things slip through the cracks, but yes, I'm planning to do that.
See, that next question is very interesting. Can you talk to us about one of your failures that you have had in Zoho?
Well, it's failure only if you abandon it, Okay. There's a lot of things. Actually, I have joked We, in fact, this is a very, it sounds like a bad analogy. Long after the patient has died and the body has gone to the mortuary, we don't give up and we go and try and maybe sometimes revive the patient. Those kind of ideas are there in Zoho history, where mostly you should give up on it, move on. We refuse to give up on it, we don't move on, and eventually something happens and it gets revived. So that is more like that. In other words, if you really believe in something and if you keep on doing it, what is failure? Failure is only an acknowledgement that it hasn't worked so far. That doesn't mean it will never work. So maybe pragmatically you don't have resources to try or any of that. But if you still believe in it, mentally you are still, committed to that idea, to the cause, then you have not failed. So that's how I'll put it.
Sridhar, you recommend books like Tyranny of Metrics and talk about gut feel in decision making, etc. But how do you go about the actual decision making? Someone comes and says, hey, I'm not sure if this product is going to work or not. What is your decision making process? You have to have, metrics are for widgets. Metrics tell you what has been. That's an objective fact. What has been is an objective fact. You can measure it. You know what the data is, right? Well, if you don't know the data is, that's a different problem. You don't have the data at all. But at least you know, like today, so much sales happened. Last month, so many visitors came. So many people used it. So many clicks happened. That's all we know. From there, projecting forward to next month, this will happen. 6 months from now, this will happen. 1 year from now, this will happen. That's purely speculation. Often informed speculation, we build models. But all of those models are really projections of the past. What all these models, most of them, almost all of them will fail is inflection points, what they call, where the model parameters themselves seemingly change. In other words, you are in a new model regime. That type of thing you can never do, because your model cannot know when that model is obsolete and the next model is due. That it takes a human judgment, and that's what I mean by that. In other words, your model itself is going to go obsolete. You have to rethink your model, think in terms of a new model. Okay. That's when human judgment has to step in.
Thank you, Sridhar. That's amazing. Thank you so much for that. Sridhar, this is again something that you spoke in the past about your journey, where you started your career in Qualcomm, where there was a lot of layoffs happening around when you were a part of that. And at Zoho, you have been very clear that there won't be layoffs. Even during the peak of COVID, when there was no clarity, you committed to employees like us saying there won't be any layoffs. Did that experience at Qualcomm impact you?
Not really Qualcomm experience. They actually, historically, they didn't have that many layoffs. But even the 1 or 2 times they did it, it was costly. And particularly in any of these high context, a piece of software is very high context. All of the knowledge is in the brains of the people. Otherwise, it's dead code. All code is dead code if nobody is around to know what's going on, right? So that context, that person is most important. And this is true for almost all kind of intellectual work. It's not just programming. Then take law, take accounting, any of this. It's very high context work. Or doctors. The doctor should know the patient, the entire history, context, all of that. So if you keep on churning, if you have a lot of turnover in this, it necessarily subtracts from long-term productivity there. So it's actually, even measurement will show up later that it's unproductive. But the human cost in the short term is also very high. So that's why I think it's companies that are built around the notion that you can hire and fire will tend to underperform companies that are built around the notion we want to keep our employees.
Beautiful. So can I also interpret this as low attrition of Zoho is also beneficial to the customer?
Absolutely. It is beneficial to the customer because we are able to innovate faster. Our people who are working on any of our products, Creator, they have been at it for 10, 15 years. The same leadership continues. If we came to our event 15 years ago, Haider would have presented. Same Haider is still here presenting, right? That is important. Charan is there, Charles is there. All these guys have been part of the Creator journey. The team has grown quite big, but all of these people who know us, as the joke is, they know where the bodies are buried. They know the bad decisions we made and the reversed, what U-turns made, all of that they know. That context is important. In fact, I'll contrast it. I once visited a customer and they were using Zoho. They actually were Zoho customer. In fact, they don't exist anymore. And in the 7 or 8 years I dealt with them, every year the critical decision makers changed. So very often, like the 4th person in charge, we would have to educate them on what the 2nd person decided. And like we, as a vendor, have to educate them on why was this decision made in your company. Like why they chose this way or that way. Because we had the context. We were continuously, in other words, the same people were going there to help the customer, but their own decision maker kept changing. So that's a kind of churn, I think that's not very productive.
The next question is on the culture side, Sridhar. I've been here at Zoho for 5 years, and in the first Zoho Leaks that I was a part of, an analyst asked you, define Zoho in one word, and you mentioned humility. Even yesterday, you had tweeted about meeting your parents and touched upon learning humility from them. Why is humility so important for you for Zoho, Sridhar?
It's engineering culture. All engineers know. See, engineers are humble by nature, have to be, because reality will always surprise you. It's not, in other words, if you are an ego-driven engineer, reality will humble you. Nature will humble you. So you always have to be looking for, this is well captured in this book, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It's a great philosophy of engineering book, we'll call it, at one level. So the idea here is, you are going to, maybe you are debugging some code, or you are researching some problem. Your humility will surface information that you might have tended to ignore if you are not humble. It's like humbly a fact is introducing itself, that as a book will say, and if it will pass you by, you tend to ignore it. If you are not paying attention, you are not humble. So humility is essential for an engineering culture. And we like to think of ourselves as an engineering culture first and foremost.
Amazing, Sridhar. Thank you. The next question is from an entrepreneur, a slightly longer question. I'm paraphrasing it like this. I have to take decisions between what I am today versus what I can be. When did you think of Zoho becoming a large entity like this and change your decision-making processes accordingly?
Again, it's, I'm going to say, continuation of the previous one. We really never forecast stuff like where we can be in 10 years, 15 years. What we can do is make intelligent bets on direction of technology. Like I mentioned, low-code platform, AI, static type systems, and why I like, you mentioned Flutter versus Swift UI, what are the pros and cons. Those are informed choices we make. But we have to be humble enough to acknowledge that some of those choices could be wrong. And I always say, when you make a wrong choice, when you make a wrong, we are going in the wrong direction, make a U-turn. That's what we do too. We have actually made U-turns often. So that is the approach that we take. With that, then you take it month at a time, quarter at a time. You don't try not to predict too far out ahead. But if you get all this right, kind of the market takes care of itself. That's what we have seen. And where could we go from here? Of course, the potential is huge. Will we ever achieve the potential? That depends on the actions or the choices we pursue today. So that's how I'll put it.
If I were an entrepreneur, how do I take the decision? Sridhar, you mentioned that there are some projects in Zoho that were buried, some projects that continued, that were rekindled even after death. So, but I have only limited resources. So how do I decide? So
you have to ask yourself, what convictions do you have? Okay. And it's okay not to have any convictions at all. A lot of people start with, I don't know anything, I have no conviction. In fact, if you don't know anything, it's better not to have any conviction, because at that point your convictions are not grounded in anything factual, in reality or any experience. So start with zero state, Zen state, as they call it. Then you slowly accumulate facts. Okay. Try not to be too opinionated. No, like I gave you maybe my Flutter versus Swift UI, but don't get too biased by it. It's my opinions, but I've analyzed it. Maybe your opinion, your mileage will vary. As I say, your mileage, that's a good disclaimer to put. Your mileage may vary. But what I would say is, then you accumulate those facts without being too opinionated. Slowly you will form certain conclusions. And be humble, be tentative in your conclusions. Over time, if you are diligent, if you are paying attention, some of them will solidify into convictions. I'll give you, in the programming language realm, I am a major proponent of statically typed languages. Rust or Java or Swift, all of that will be in that category, as opposed to JavaScript or Python or Ruby or any of those. I am on the camp of statically typed languages. It's a strong conviction, I would say. And that type of, you will form convictions. And you have to understand why you have those convictions. You also have to be looking at facts that might contradict your conviction. And so do you need to make a change here. But so convictions slowly formed, strongly held, but with an open mind. That is how you make decisions.
You clearly cannot have convictions in hundreds of areas. Nobody has the time. Like I have no convictions about how to make movies. I have no conviction how to make a camera, for example. I know nothing about it. So in those cases, I should have no opinions at all. I'm a blank slate. If you ask me, how will you make a movie? I'll say 0. Right? So that's how I behave. So areas where I have convictions, statically typed, I said, I tend to have strong convictions. Areas where I don't know, I'll say I have no opinion.
I am enjoying this conversation, Sridhar. I always thought of you like you're an original thinker, but this explanation of conviction sort of gives me an understanding of where that original thinking is coming from.
And the conviction also, it very much matters. Once conviction, you have a strong conviction, you must act. Because a conviction without action is a waste of time. You did nothing about it. Let's say you have developed a conviction. For example, this is another example of conviction. We as a company have not believed in formal credentials like degrees, grades, all that. That was a conviction slowly formed with observation. Our own observational data, and in so many companies, will confirm this. You ask the HR of even big companies, they'll tell you this. Even after forming the conviction, nobody acts on it. Like you still go and act as though degrees matter, grades matter, all that. The way that we acted on our conviction is, we formed the Zoho Schools of Learning, we abolished all the credentials. That's what I mean by you have to act on the conviction.
Got it, sir. Next is slightly again on the product angle, Sridhar. Zoho offers a fantastic developer suite with Creator, Flow, Catalyst, and Deluge. What is the direction you would love for this suite to take forward?
It has to, the reason why we are bundling these together, there's of course some are no code. You look at the Flow, all of that, and some are low code, and Catalyst is more pro code, meaning it has full code there. And all of these, there's a spectrum. It's not like any one thing will solve all the problems, but the spectrum. And we have to integrate all this so that we give you an experience where any problem you come across should mostly fall in the no code, low code spectrum. Occasionally, when you need something, the full code is available. That's how I see it. So it has to be a full set of tools in your toolkit to solve any problem. And we are stitching it together more and more. That's why that whole suite is evolving. It's very much, if you look at all of Zoho and the Creator plus all of it, it's work in progress where increasingly our vision becomes clearer. We ourselves look at the experience, talk to the customer, see how it's used, and then revise our own convictions about it. And that forms the next set of actions. That's how we progress.
Got it, sir. So just a couple of questions. We're almost towards the end of the session. Just a couple of questions and then one rapid fire round. So the last 2 questions is, this AMA is happening at Tenkasi, 600 kilometers from Chennai. How is the rural empowerment initiative of Zoho going? What have been your learning in the...
It's going really awesome. In fact, our next door office, our 1,000-seater we are building, we already have about 800 people here, 850 people in this office, this building. We have another 1,000-seater coming. And we have 4 such campuses coming up now. So most of our new recruitment is going into our rural centers now. So that's, in that sense, it's very successful. We are also expanding our Zoho schools in a big way. And I have actually the rural schools, the Kalaivani Kalvi Mayam we have started, that's also going very well. 200 rural students are studying in our schools. We are going to raise it to about 500 to 800 in the next 1 year. So that's also going well. And I plan to start manufacturing initiatives. In fact, we are starting some manufacturing. The difference is we are not just going to create a factory and factory jobs. We also want to bring the technology behind those factories. And that too. So we are creating an R&D center for what I call the high value add manufacturing, the automation, industry 4.0 type of IoT, those kind of technologies we are bringing, and design center for all those. So that's the next stage. So I do believe, see, within the Indian context, there is no really such thing as rural anymore. Because everything is like, I came about 20 minutes, I came to this office now. And from here to Tenkasi is about 20-30 minutes. From here to the nearest airport is about 2.5 hours. So it's not that far from anything. And so you can take the night train. So I just came back from Chennai. I've been in Chennai twice this week. So it's not that difficult. I mean, it's possible to earn, and our teams travel. So I know anywhere, so you can create a cluster. And then what's the benefit of rural? Well, cheap real estate. I have to ask, if you're an entrepreneur, ask yourself, why pay the real estate price? Single worst cost that affects everyone in the world, everyone where you are, is the high real estate price. So escape high real estate price. That's what I'll say.
Last question before the rapid fire, slightly vague one. Do you believe in luck?
So the
as they say, luck favors the prepared mind. In other words, even when luck strikes, if you are not prepared for it, you will not be able to take advantage. So, luck is where unexpectedly good things happen, but whether you are able to take advantage of that depends on whether you have, as an example, I mean, this has happened before. We, in fact, recently it happened. We were going to introduce our product in Mexico, our Zoho Books suite. Well, the week before, very helpfully, Intuit vacates the market. QuickBooks. So, Zoho Books goes into the market, and just a few days before, Intuit says we are pulling out of Mexico. And would you call it luck? I mean, we didn't expect it. We were going to enter the market, but then vacating helped us because then suddenly those customers abandoned. So there's an initial pool of customers. So that's luck, you can say. But that luck, we wouldn't have been able to take advantage if we had not prepared our own product for the market.
The last section is rapid fire, just calling it rapid fire, but feel free to answer in detail as well if required. The first question is, what was your first designation that you used in your business card?
I call myself VP of Marketing and Business Development.
And that time you said you didn't feel like you can use a CEO that time.
No, actually Tony was CEO. We already had a CEO. So I was really, my task was to try to sell the software Tony had developed. And I'm not a very good salesperson, but I guess as a joke, between Tony and me, I am the salesperson. So,
how many Twitter followers do you have?
I don't know. 200,000 maybe?
260K. Your favorite book or a book that you're reading currently?
Most recently, I've been reading a lot of blogs, particularly on compiler development, all of that. These are not even in book form. There's a particular Rust developer who writes a lot about compilers. So I've been reading a lot of that because this tooling is what I'm mostly working on right now. And I've been reading about some different takes on economics. See, this is I'll give you my perspective on technology, finance, and economics. Here, I am looking at why a district is poor, rural district is so poor versus why some place is rich. Ultimately, it comes down to know-how and capability. What we sell, what we buy, the balance. Here we sell mostly agricultural products. And from San Francisco, you sell sophisticated technology. If we are not able to compete for those technology jobs, we will never be rich. We will never even be middle income. So we have to compete for technology know-how. So that's the conclusion I came to, which is why schools, all of that. And so I'm reading a lot about those topics. How do you get the know-how? Now, what areas should we focus on? So that's what I'm reading about.
Any blog name or any book that you would...
So like, for example, this blog, Asianometry, I think that's a good video. It's a video log, and he covers topics about the Taiwan semiconductor industry.
Okay.
In general, he looks at broader Asian industry in general. It's a really good video log.
If given a choice, who will you swap roles with? I will take this person's role currently. Who would that be?
No, I think I'm happy in my own shoes. I enjoy my life.
Recently, we asked this question to Sharan Sridhar. His answer was, I will take the role of a fresher. I will have more free time and do a lot of interesting projects.
Yeah, I think about that too, but I already anyway spend a lot of time coding. So
okay.
I can't complain too much. So,
thank you. Reddit or Twitter?
Twitter.
Zoho of the 2000s or Zoho of the 2020s?
I think both had their charms. When the company was smaller, it had something, but now we have resources to attempt bigger problems too. Can't complain. No, we can go and say we'll build a browser. There's no way we could have done it. Even if we wanted to do all those things, we couldn't do it.
Okay.
So now we can build a compiler, we can build a browser, we can build a database, all of that. So it's, in a sense, it's fun too. But sometimes you miss the thing where you know everyone. You cannot know everyone. So there's all that.
Okay. Sridhar of the US or Sridhar of the Tenkasi?
Well, I much prefer where I am right now. So you can see.
Last but one question, Sridhar. Your favorite non-Zoho product? Can be anything. Need not be software alone, but any product that you use that is your favorite.
Well, today I drove my Tata Nexon EV. It's a real, nice package there. It's nice, fun to drive. In fact, it tempts you to drive a little fast actually because the handling is so good. So I have to say that car, for its package, the size, all of that, it's very nicely done. I'm so happy with the Indian-made car, that nice. So I'm happy. Thank you.
Your favorite country other than India, obviously?
I definitely have always been a sort of a Japan I've studied Japan a lot. I've visited Japan a lot, and how the country with it's also a densely populated, heavily populated small island. Right, the population is smaller than India, but the country is much smaller than India too. So for that country with no natural resources, with a heavily what they would have called overpopulated at that time, nobody says that about Japan anymore. That how they progressed, how they became an industrial power. That, and then Japanese rural areas have their charms too. In fact, Lord of Tenkasi, all these areas would remind you of how Japan's rural areas are. So all that's what I would, if I had time, I would spend some time in Japan, rural Japan in particular. Not the big cities, rural Japan.
Thank you so much, Sridhar. Thanks everyone for joining. One final note from Sridhar in terms of, to anybody who is listening, Sridhar, developers, the audience that you're listening, your final message to them.
Well, I tweeted this today. I said, think of the code you write as you're writing for the next programmer. And think of it as the next programmer has to understand context-free. Only knowing the domain, not knowing your specific code, the next programmer has to understand. Because in 3 months, the next programmer could be yourself. You are going to get confused by your own code. So that's the parting thought for the day. Thank you.